And hello everybody, and welcome to this next part in the Top 11 video tutorial series. In this part, we're going to talk about how to plan ahead for the future. By that I mean, how do we make sure that we have a good team next season and the season after that, not just the season right now. And that's really important in this game because if you're having to recycle your team every year, you're going to spend a lot of tokens. And chances are you're not going to play as well as you think you are. The reason for that is quite simple. You never know how well your guys are going to perform until you get them on the pitch. So when you get players who consistently play well and consistently get high form ratings, you want to keep those guys. Even if their ratings aren't as high, you definitely want to keep them. I would much rather have a guy who's 3 or 4 stars but performs than a guy who's 5 or 6 stars and doesn't really do much. And if you play this game, you'll see that that's going to happen quite frequently. You're going to have guys who overperform and underperform, and it's usually consistently the same guys every season. So with that said, let's jump right into this. The first thing you want to do is decide when you get a guy, how many seasons do you think you're going to use from him, best case. A good way you can check on this is a lot of it is their player value. I've had some of these players for 5 or 6 seasons. I've had some I just got this season. So if you're buying an expensive player, it needs to be a guy you think you're going to use for several seasons, assuming he plays at the level you expect. So this season, I bought Bullions. I paid 15 tokens for him on the transfer market, and quite a lot of money, as you can see. He's only 18, so I believe he will play for several seasons. If he does, I consider that a success. On the other side of the spectrum, Inui here, I also bought this season. He plays 3 positions, very valuable. He has a special ability which I like, but he's 31. So my prediction for him, he starts for me this season. Next season, he'll probably be a substitute. But that's okay because I have a spot for him for 2 seasons. So a guy like that is nice to have, but I'm not going to pay a lot for that guy. But it is possible to keep guys for many seasons. These 2 guys here I've had since season 6. I bought them when they were 18. They were expensive at the time. Their value has kept going up. I believe they were about 11 or 12 million when I bought them, so they've gone way up in value. If a guy is going up in value each year, then he's a guy you probably want to keep. That means he's increasing in value faster than he's aging. Weiser here I've had for 6 seasons. I bought him in season 4. This is season 9, so he's been my starter right there ever since. I've almost never moved him. When I got him, I paid about 7 million for him. He's almost doubled in his price, and he's been my best defender I've ever had. He gets a rating of 7 or 8 pretty much every game, so I couldn't be happier with him. So what's the lesson here? Plan ahead and think, how long do you want a guy? In 3 days, a new season will start. So right now, I would need to plan who I want to replace. The first thing I want to do is just go position by position, ask myself, okay, who is underperforming? Who is definitely overperforming, in which case they will for sure be on next season's team, and who is, kind of in the middle, and we can replace if we need to. I'm not going to go through all the statistics because it's kind of hard to see here on Facebook, but I'll just speak from my experience. My keeper has always been good, so I unlikely will replace him. He's also been good. These 2 guys, Weiser is getting a little older. He's 24 now, so I don't really want to replace him because he's been so good and he's having another good season. Baum is my best young player, so I don't want to replace him. This guy will probably be a substitute. This guy is nothing special, so we can replace him. This guy is not going anywhere. These 2 guys are good. This guy especially has had a good season, but they can be replaced. They're not unusually fast trainers. They're not unusually young. And they're not doing so well that I don't feel I can improve. So with those guys, we can look for replacements. I have 2 possible strikers. This guy is really expensive, but his performance has not been great, so we will be looking to replace him. This guy has played pretty well, so maybe we want to replace him, maybe we don't. And this guy is clearly my best player, so he doesn't go anywhere. And all the reserves, don't worry about. You can look at statistics, and that'll kind of confirm what I said. You see, he plays quite well, lots of 8s and 7s, 8s and 7s, 1 poor game, but don't worry about that. He's wonderful. And you just kind of look through and you say, who is not doing their job? And this guy, as you see, he's not doing much. 11 matches, 2 goals, 4 assists. So even though he's young and really good, maybe we want to look another direction, as opposed to this guy, he's older, less expensive, but we're never replacing that. So if I was to upgrade these 2 guys, I would want something long-term. Those guys are already serviceable for another season, so unless I can get something better than that, I would just keep what I had. So always look for guys who can play for several more seasons, unless you don't have anything of value there, and then you just take what you can get. So for example, in my midfield and my defensive right, these guys are not long-term players. They have never been long-term players, and they will never be. So I look to upgrade them for sure. The other thing to consider is your formation. It would do me no good, for example, to spend a lot of money to buy an ML unless I have an MR, because that looks pretty ridiculous. So if I get a guy to play here, I have to get a guy to play there. So if I want a formation like this, which is my favorite, then I have to make sure I get the players who I can run this with, or what's the point? I don't want to buy an expensive guy to play here when I don't use that position. I might buy an inexpensive one who can play multiple positions, say here and here, and use the sub, or as a guy if I want to run, say, a counter formation. But it's not something I would invest in long term. The players I would invest in long term are the players that play in these positions, because this is my formation. Anybody I put for others would just be older players who don't cost much, because I don't want to spend a lot of money on a position I'm not going to use. So that's really, really, really important when you consider the kinds of players you want. Now we're going to talk about strategy. How do you prepare season by season? And what do you do if you have a bad season? The first thing you want to consider is, what's your goal? Are you trying to be great in your league, the Champions League, the Cup, or are you trying to win the Triple Crown? It's very unlikely you can look at a team before the season and say, this is my Triple Crown team. There's no way you can predict that until after the season starts and you're able to buy some players on the transfer market or scouts or something, because if you have a highly rated team, as I do now, then you're going to be in a very difficult cup bracket. If you have a low-rated team, you'll be an easier cup, but you're going to struggle in your league and in your Champions League. So if you want to do well in all three, you need a balance. You need a great team, but it needs to be great later in the season. If it's great at the beginning of the season, then you have very little chance to win the cup. If it's great in the middle of the season and into the end of the season, then you have a chance. So what many people will do is, anybody who is not a long-term plan, they will sell by the end of the season and try to replace them after this next season starts, and they're placed in a cup bracket. I don't do that because I don't want to, and I like my team, and I don't want to give up my players that I think can play well, but I'm not afraid to get rid of the ones that don't play well. So for the long-term health of your team, you want as many reliable players as you can get that can also carry over from season to season. So what happens if you are failing in your league? Well, you have to repeat the league. Some players use this to their advantage. It's called tanking. This is something I've never done and I'm certainly not an expert in, but it can be done if you want to stay in a level lower. For example, I have a lot of fast trainers. If we go back to my contract details, pretty much anybody from here up trains pretty quick. These guys especially are very fast. So what if I said to myself, I want to stay in level 9 for a couple of years, and I just want to train my guys so I have a better team? Well, what I can do is just do something really silly, like this. Play my players just in all random places. Sure, everybody's out of position. There I have no defenders. My keeper is not a keeper. And my team just looks really stupid. So what will this do? Well, I'm going to lose every game by 10 goals, and I will not be promoted into the next league. However, I get to keep all my training points. So now, when I get to Season 9 again, instead of my players starting as 5 stars, they'll start looking like this. So I already have 4 scout players, 1 world class, and the rest of my team is 63 and 64. So I would fail to qualify for Champions League, but I would almost guaranteed to be very high in my league next year. And if I put that in combination with keeping guys like this on the team, that could increase my chances in Cup if he qualifies in my top 14. So if I did this for 2 seasons, I would then have an entire team of 6 and 7 star players who would then be in a league which is 2 levels below them. And that's a pretty tough combination. So that's a pretty good summary of how to tank. I would not recommend that to anybody unless they are really trying to do this strategy to win their league, or they get so high in the game that they feel that they can't compete with the high level managers without doing it. But it is definitely a viable strategy for those that think it's worth it. So with that said, I'm going to sign off now. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we hope to see you again for the next part. Thank you very much, and have a good day.